Signing on a little bit early to make sure we've got everything going the way it needs to go. There it goes. Looks like we're up and running. Yes. Okay, and I've got the screen up. I've got the chat up. If anybody joins early, you could give me a thumbs up. Hey Sam, if you can give me a thumbs up that the audio is good, we'll get started here in about a minute. We'll get started with some football news, and then I will take any and all football questions that you have. I know it's a big draft night tonight. East Coast about dinner time and commute home time. West Coast still in their work day. So a lot of them will pick this up maybe on their commute home. Alright, we got an audio check. That's good. Perfect. I'm going to give it about 30 more seconds to hit official 6:30, and then we will get rolling. If you have any questions or comments this evening, go ahead and put them in the chat. I will pick them up in the order that they came in. I will try to get to every one of them before I have a hard out at 8 o'clock. But if we blow through all the questions before then that will be the end of the show. So, looks like we are about ready to roll. People are getting through the initial YouTube commercial greeting, most likely. So, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start out with a handful of news items, updates from the news, things that I'm getting asked the most questions on. And if you see me looking down from time to time, I'm getting all kinds of texts and information sent to me all day about various things I've been trying to get some better information on or inside information on to update for the show. So if I look down, I'm looking to see if I got some hot news. So let me start with what I think I know or what I do know from the from today's football news and kind of from the last week of items we've been talking about on our show, like with Deshaun Watson and Blake Corum. I'll update those here in a little bit, but just to double check and reiterate, no sit start questions tonight. It's too early for that. We're still trying to get settled in to the final drafts, which most of the last drafts are happening tonight, some tomorrow, some the rest of the week, but the majority of the final redrafting is happening tonight. So we will do sit start. I'm hoping to do a show on Thursday. All plans are for Thursday pregame for sit start questions ahead of the game, and then we'll probably hang out and watch a little bit of the game itself. Myself and Andrew is the plan. So anything but sit start we'll deal with tonight. Okay, news items. The Jamar Chase situation. There's not a lot. I mean, there's a surge of football news hitting just in the enthusiasm for football's getting ready to begin. Seeing all the fantasy articles about who's a sleeper, who's gonna be a bust, all that kind of typical stuff. But in actual news items, with Trent Williams signing his deal, and and Ayuk getting his deal a couple days ago, all kind of the big news. There's not a lot of exciting news to drum up viewership and readership for football, except for the Jamar Chase situation. That's got everybody worked up into a lather The news is covering it as this is ominous. Things are bad between him and the Bengals. The Bengals don't do these kind of things, except for they just did those types of things for Joe Burrow, doing a contract extension 2 years early. My take on the Jamar Chase situation, especially for those that are drafting tonight, if you're in a position, if you're in like the coveted 3, 4, 5 early half of your redraft, and you got all these other options at the top between Amon-Ra and Tyreek and Jefferson and Lamb, if you're looking wide receiver and you're picking in the top 5 or 6, and the Jamar Chase situation is a situation. Nobody else has a situation of the golden wide receivers up at the top. There's no situation going on with Tyreek. His hand is fine. There's no situation going on contractually anymore with Justin Jefferson, and there's nothing going on with Amon-Ra. Everybody in the upper group is fine, except for Jamar Chase has this issue hanging out there. If you want to use that as a tiebreaker between picking Chase and one of those other top wide receivers, it totally makes sense to go away from Chase, even if you're excited, even if you want him, because why take the risk when you got all these similarly exciting fantasy wide receivers? There's no compelling argument. There's no clear-cut argument. There's no anything that any fantasy analyst or any fantasy GM can make that says Tyreek Hill is the first wide receiver you got to take, or Justin Jefferson is, or CeeDee Lamb is. All of these guys are capable in that upper wide receiver group of being the number one wide receiver for the season. You can argue schedules and personal favorites and all that, and I would just say go with your personal favorite or who might connect with your overall draft plan, maybe the quarterback you're planning on taking later. But all those wide receivers are good. So if you want to are great. You want to avoid Jamar Chase because he's the one wide receiver of the group that has kind of a stain on him right now. That makes total sense. If you want to risk it and dive in and draft him because you think this is going to be a non-issue in 24 hours, I get that too. And I'll address that part in a second, what I think is going to happen with Jamar Chase. The question is starting to become, what I'm starting to see in the last 24 hours is, yes, people are avoiding Jamar Chase. So when all the other wide receivers go off the board up at the top, there sits Chase. Then Chase starts to fall because when everybody else is passing him up past his typical ADP range, everybody else gets afraid for the same reasons, plus they see him dropping. So who wants to be the one to be daring and grab a hot potato when you got A.J. Brown and Bijan Robinson and all of these other options? So there is a case to push Jamar Chase to the back end of the first round. I'm starting to see him go 10, 11, and 12. So the question is more for people drafting tonight. If you're sitting there at 10, what used to be a bad, an unfavorable a position that I didn't want to be in, drafting 9, 10, 11, 12 in a 12 team, like all of a sudden Jamar Chase is sitting there. Now what do you do? So I can see bypassing him and just saying, hey, it's a first round pick. Why should I take this risk? My personal feeling on what's going to happen, and this is just, I have no inside information, been trying to get it, but I know as much as everybody else knows. But what I think is going to happen with history as our guide is these situations end up getting resolved before the season starts. These star players are not going to be a holdout. They're not going to miss the entire season. They're going to threaten it because that's what they've got to do. I mean, Jamar Chase's only negotiating position is to say, I'm going to hold out for the season. Anything he says less than that, he loses all of his negotiating power. All he's got is, fine, I'll sit out the season. So that sounds scary when he's saying that. And if the Bengals, who obviously haven't done anything yet about it, haven't given him his money, they're notoriously cheap. There's things in the news of the Bengals just don't do that. No teams do. No team wants to sign their non-quarterback or even their quarterback, but they don't want to sign their non-quarterback 2 years early to a contract extension. It's smart of Jamar Chase when you see that Justin Jefferson is getting paid this way, Lamb is getting paid this way, Tyreek's getting paid this way, Ayuk, who Jamar Chase is obviously better than, is getting paid. Jamar Chase is in the right to go, I'm better than Brandon Ayuk. I'm just as good or I'm better than CeeDee Lamb. I'm just as good or better than Justin Jefferson. I don't care what history says or what precedent says or any of that kind of stuff. Pay me what I'm worth. And he's right. So he's got the Bengals in a vice. They know it. I don't know how hard-headed they're willing to be. I'm sure they're taking it. I mean, they're engaged in conversations. The conversations are not Jamar Chase wants a lot of money and the Bengals are saying you're just going to have to play for what we say. They're not that far apart. The Bengals are making offers, and if the Bengals are making offers, I think there's even one publicly out there what they offered, rumored, were speculated to have offered. If the Bengals are making offers, then yes, they do negotiate 2 years ahead in special circumstances. So now it's just a debate of how much money are they going to pay. They're going to pay it. They're just trying to figure out in the poker game the least amount of money that they can get away with. And obviously Jamar's on the other end with really a ton of leverage, saying, I deserve this. Lamb and Jefferson and Ayuk set the market for him. It's a perfect situation. So, and I don't think that Bengals are going to, if the Bengals were a middle of the road team and they didn't have Joe Burrow, then I'd get concerned that they would really mess with Jamar Chase. But this is a potential Super Bowl team. Jamar Chase is Joe Burrow's best friend. I believe they live in the same neighborhood. They may even live next door to each other. They're not going to mess with Jamar Chase because they don't want to mess with Joe Burrow. So I think this is going to get resolved in the next day or two. Jamar Chase doesn't have to practice to be ready for Week 1. You know he's in supreme shape. He's not going to come in bad shape. And he's a wide receiver. He's not like a middle linebacker or an offensive lineman or a running back that you may worry that there's a bit of rust. I mean, he's in supreme shape. Go run the routes. Go run past everybody and catch the ball like you normally do. So I personally, if Chase is falling, I'm in. If I'm in that group where I've got, hey, I could go Chase, I could go Jefferson, I could go Tyreek, I could go Amon-Ra, I'll take the safe way out, because why take on any of the risk when I've got similar players? But if he starts falling to 10, 11, and 12, and I'm between, A.J. Brown or Devontae Adams or what have you, I'll take Jamar Chase in a heartbeat, because I would be 99% sure they're going to come to some resolution and pay him and get this season underway. They may even think that, they can mess with this to the last second, because do they really need him for the New England game? but they're going to want him for that Kansas City game. So might you get 1 week of no Chase at the worst case scenario? Maybe. But even then, you would take him if he fell to number 12. If he had like a 1 game suspension or whatever, you would take him in the top 12. You would get by that 1 week without him just to have him for the rest of the season. So that's my thought on Jamar Chase for those that are drafting tonight. And I don't think there's a wrong answer. There's no wrong answer in just bypassing him and taking something that's more secure. I don't think it's wrong to assume heavily that he's going to get signed to his deal. All right, the rest of my news is more quick hit. Trent Williams got signed. There's another situation. To me, that was even more important than... I think the Bengals could live on without Jamar Chase. But the San Francisco 49ers, arguably their best player after Brock Purdy is Trent Williams. And it may be that Trent Williams is better big picture than Brock Purdy. So going against the Jets, if they didn't have Trent Williams, that was going to be a problem for Purdy and everybody else. The Jets' defense is already a problem. The San Francisco offensive line is already starting to become a problem. It would have been a full-scale mess without Trent Williams. But as expected, these things end up working out when you got these star players. So Trent Williams is there, and he'll be fine. I don't know about the rest of the offensive line. I don't like the matchup for the San Francisco guys, but everything is better with Trent Williams in. Christian McCaffrey, all I've heard and all I've seen is, Christian McCaffrey was back at practice. And if somebody knows differently than this, tell me. But what I haven't seen is I saw Christian McCaffrey taking handoffs and doing drills. I saw, here's tape of Christian McCaffrey working. All I've seen is he's back at practice. Well, great. I could have been at that practice. That doesn't mean that I'm going to start Monday Night Football with a calf injury question just because I'm back at practice. So I want to know that he's actually really practicing and moving around before I'd say, okay, the Jordan Mason high alert drops down a couple of notches. So to this point, I have not seen that McCaffrey's actually really practicing, besides that he was at practice. So if you're drafting tonight, the Jordan Mason who's gaining momentum, because all the people who are drafting McCaffrey number one are definitely eyeballing Jordan Mason way ahead of where the ADPs are, because that's a Monday Night Football game and they need both of those guys, because today we still don't know that McCaffrey is really back. So if you're going to try to get the scoop on somebody on Jordan Mason, you're probably going to need to be... I see him going anywhere from 120 to 140 overall, depending on how smart and slick your league mates are and what the system, what the platform you're drafting on, where they have Mason ranked. Is he in view when we get into the hundreds, or is he still way down off the grid? So just that note on McCaffrey, Jordan Mason. Marquise Brown is out, so it's wheels up for Rashee Rice. Everybody who was drafting a couple weeks ago, when we started really piling into Rashee Rice, he's probably the hottest ADP climber now, but it was a great bargain a couple of weeks ago. So everybody who got Rashee Rice in the last 2 weeks before this spike, because everybody's realizing he's not going to get suspended this year, it was a great pick, and it's going to be a great play on Thursday night. Just another boost without Marquise Brown being there. Brian Daboll announced that he is going to be doing the play calling this year, which I suspected he was going to. Couple things on that. I'm very intrigued by the Giants this year. I think they could win that division. if it wasn't for Daniel Jones, if they had any other quarterback, if they had Russell Wilson, if they had Aiden O'Connell, if they had any number of lower end quarterbacks, I would say the Giants are going to win that division. And if they actually had a decent quarterback, if they would have got a Jaden Daniels, if they would have drafted Michael Penix, then I think the Giants would have won that division. I still think they can win it, even with Daniel Jones, because it was only 2 years ago that they were making the playoffs and winning games in the playoffs somehow, some way with Daniel Jones. Back when I believe Brian Daboll was still play calling. Then he gave it over to the guy from Kansas City, Mike Kafka, who's turning out to be another Matt Nagy level Andy Reid disciple. So he's already been demoted. He's the offensive coordinator, but he's not calling the plays. So good for Daboll. He's going to go down with the ship doing the play calls. That's a good thing for the Giants, for those betting such things this year. Updates on my two rumors from last week, and it's not going to be anything new. Just on the Deshaun Watson front, I'm still going to say be very wary of Deshaun Watson. Now, that can get interpreted as, oh crap, we need to sell off Amari Cooper, we need to bail on everything. I don't know that the Browns aren't better off with anybody else but Deshaun Watson. I mean, the Browns may be a better team without Deshaun Watson. Possibly the worst thing that could happen to the Browns is they actually start playing games with Deshaun Watson. So it's not a full-scale panic for fantasy. It's more of just Jameis Winston comes with his own set of issues, but and it may be more of a betting thing to worry about for the Browns, because if they had Joe Flacco, then the Browns may compete for the division title. With Deshaun Watson, I don't think that they're going to compete with Cincinnati and Baltimore, but I still say Deshaun Watson's very much in a risk situation for this season, and I can't tell you the details on what it is, but when and if it happens, I will let you know that that's what I had heard. So, but it looks like he's playing week 1. However, I don't think anybody's seen him at practice throwing the football and participating in that manner. So, like with McCaffrey, I need to see it to believe in them for week 1. I think they are both gonna play for week 1. I guess McCaffrey pretty much I think he's gonna play. Deshaun Watson, we'll see, but I would like to see actual video or somebody's firsthand awareness that yes, they were really participating in practice. From the Browns standpoint, it affects more how you might want to bet the game based on if there's a Deshaun Watson thing that happens and Jameis Winston has to start. So Jameis Winston's the only quarterback that we have projected for scoring for the week that's not the listed starter. So I'm still in a position of wait and see on Deshaun Watson. But I don't think it's going to crash Amari Cooper or bring down the Browns from a fantasy perspective. But if they have to switch to Jameis Winston, it's going to be more passing, but more turnovers and more problems. But Jameis Winston usually turns numbers. It's not like he's a complete disaster. He's going to throw his picks and ruin the team, but I think he'll also deal numbers as well. On the Blake Corum, Kyron Williams front, I'm I keep getting information. My source was very confident a week or so ago that Corum was going to be over Kyron Williams really fast into the season, and maybe even by week 1. Not that it'd be like an 80-20 Corum, but that it's like it's a split, and then they're wanting to push Corum. When I got that news, it was the same day. Then later that day, we got the Kyron Williams' returning punts little tidbit, which made that Corum push more prescient, more interesting. In the week since I pushed the whole Corum narrative, all I've gotten from various places is more, hey, we think this might be a Corum-Kyron split. Some of it from, I'd say, more insiders, and then I'm even starting to see it from some outsiders that are starting to throw that around out there. So there's a lot of momentum going for a Corum-Kyron split, and I believe and am led to believe that's because the Rams are ready to roll behind Corum as much as they would be behind Kyron. It's not going to be a Kyron repeat RB1 season, I don't believe, unless Corum gets hurt. Luke McCaffrey is listed as the starter on the latest depth chart over De'Ami Brown. That I don't think that means that McCaffrey is we got all the McCaffreys in the news today. I don't believe that Luke McCaffrey is now a sudden star or starter. It's good news that he's obviously that they're thinking of him in the starting lineup. That shows you how good. I'm trying to tell everybody that De'Ami Brown is no good. That's how you knew Jahan Dotson is terrible, is that De'Ami Brown was outplaying him. So it was only going to be a matter of time before Luke McCaffrey would be obviously better to have on the field than De'Ami Brown. Kudos to Washington. They figured that out before the first opening kick. But McCaffrey is still an outside wide receiver, not a slot, so I don't like that. I want him in the slot for fantasy purposes. He may get there soon, but right now he's not in the slot. He's on the outside, which is not a great place across from McLaurin. And then it's very possible that within 2 or 3 weeks, Noah Brown is ahead of Luke McCaffrey as an outside wide receiver. It just makes more sense. If I was Washington, I would put Noah Brown on the outside when he's ready and then put McCaffrey in the slot. But I don't know that Washington's going to do that. I think Dan Quinn's too tied to that Zacchaeus from back in their days in Atlanta. He's just into him. So I'm just a little worried about this being a Luke McCaffrey catapult into, we're going to start him for fantasy, and here comes the Luke McCaffrey train. I don't think that's going to happen. I think people are going to be disappointed early on by what McCaffrey's doing for fantasy. He's going to hit a lot of waiver wires, and then we'll just keep an eye on the situation. So the Luke McCaffrey news today is good, but it doesn't mean here comes superstardom. So that's it for me for the news. Let's turn to the questions and comments, but one quick thing. If you've seen it on the website, that betting subscription is still on track to open up tonight. I've been working on it with the website developer. They're testing it since midnight last night to 10 minutes before going on air, going through things and checking things, but unless something crazy comes up, that subscription is going to be available after I'm gonna guess after 8 o'clock, maybe after 9 o'clock. The opening event, the opening thing that's gonna be in there. I've got other things I need to put in there, but I'm waiting for them to get it all finalized and ready to go. But I the most important thing that I wanted to get out there as the first thing that they're set to publish for anybody who subscribes to that, is Andrew and Bet the Close Chris and myself shot a 3-hour show going through all the divisions and division bets, prop bets, individual team bet. I mean, we went through a lot, and we had a great time. I made several bets as we were talking through it. I literally was listening, but also clicking through my accounts to make some of the bets that we were talking about because the compelling case that we were discussing. So I think there's a lot of great stuff on that. That video is for subscribers. It's a YouTube video, but it's not a public YouTube video. It's just going to be for subscribers to see. If you're wanting to get in bets before the season, man, that's going to be a hot video. As soon as it's up and going and I'm off the show and I see that, and they tell me that the betting area is going to be green lit and everybody's going to be able to subscribe and start getting into it, I've got a draft right after this show. But I have my portfolio of bets. I meant to check this before, but I have like 125 individual bets on things, to all varying degrees. I'm going to show you my portfolio, my spreadsheet of all of my bets. That will be the next thing to post after that YouTube video. But depending on the timing, the first and only thing you'll see is the video, but my portfolio will be coming soon after that. And then we'll get into the private chat, the Discord for FFM. We'll deal with all of that tomorrow. You just want to get in and get ready, and then all the initial information is going to start tumbling in tonight, and things getting ramped up on the chat side, on the Discord side tomorrow. So if you're into those things, look out for that. All right, I'm going to the top of the chat. Gonna try to get through all these questions and comments before 8 o'clock, because it's a hard out at 8. In fact, it's 7:01. I'm gonna set the timer on my watch for 1 hour. Okay, here we go. Morgan is kicking us off. I don't want to butcher your last name, so I'm just gonna say Morgan A. First question: PPR, 2 running back, 2 wide receiver, 2 flex. Got the extra flex with yardage bonuses. Since you have Rashad and Henry as high values that I could get at the 2-3 turn, I hope that you can get them at the 2-3 turn. Okay, so you're drafting in the middle or early out the draft. Take at number 1 overall. That's a tough one because I don't know. I don't think you'll get Henry if this is a 10 team. I doubt you would get Henry. If this is a 12 team draft, you're not getting Henry. So Rashad could and should be there, but there should be other running backs, but it's risky. I've gone through it, and then all of a sudden, when I pick at number 1, then all of a sudden I come to 2-3, and I'm hoping that some level of Henry, Pacheco, Rashad are all there, which was true a couple months ago, but it's not. So you might get aced out of all of them, which forces you to make the McCaffrey pick at number 1, have that be a part of your running back story. Then at 2-3, you hope that one of those guys is there. It's probably Rashad. You take him, and then you can take a wide receiver 3. Or depending on your league, you might need to race in and take a quarterback because you're not picking again for 23 more picks, and maybe the quarterbacks you want are going to be gone, and then you're just going to have to make up wide receiver as you go. Or you take McCaffrey, and then all of a sudden Henry, Rashad, and who other running backs that we like value highly there are there. If you go running back, running back, running back, and you've got the power at running back, especially when you can use two flex, and therefore you're gonna be maybe a little weaker at wide receiver, it's okay to have. I'm gonna get my hands into the camera shot here and see if I can do it right. You can have the power at running back and be okay at wide receiver, and that's how you start. Versus if you just have a balance, it's the same thing as if you've got a tilt of running back power and okay at wide receiver. If you're just balanced, on average you're in the same place. So it's not a bingo card that we're trying to fill out to make sure that I get my two running backs, then I get my two wide receivers, then I get my quarterback, then I get my tight end. Look, I got a starting lineup. If the draft takes you in a direction where you're just getting incredible value at like running back, and you get three running backs off the jump, you're going to have the power, especially with two flex, and you'll have the ability to trade one of those guys in season. Everybody's always going to be hot to trot for running backs, so they're assets. They're not positional balance situations. I want to take assets. I'm keeping in mind that I need to have starters at these positions, but it's okay if you're powerful at running back and a little less powerful on the surface at wide receiver. You can make that up, or these wide receivers that we like in the middle rounds come through and everything is wonderful. So you can work your way out of that if it gets imbalanced to a point where it gets uncomfortable. You don't have to have the most perfectly balanced draft going in, most perfectly balanced drafted team going into the season. I mean, sometimes I'm not even taking a defense. I'm taking an extra 3 weeks ago, before everybody got onto it, I was drafting Jordan Mason with my last pick because I just wanted to see if McCaffrey was really seriously hurt or not. So if I could, I would still take Jordan Mason as my last pick if he was going to be there. Now he's not. Everybody's getting onto the Jordan Mason train now. But like I could take a Jordan Mason and not take a defense and buy myself another day or two to see what's really going on with McCaffrey. Then if I need to drop Mason or somebody else, like McCaffrey's fine, and I'll drop somebody else and I'll pick up a defense. There's plenty of great defenses to go with this week that are not in the mainstream picked group. So there's a lot of different ways you can go with the in the draft. So your question is definitely valid, and it is not crazy to start with a wide receiver and then go for the two running backs. I just have a feeling those running backs every one of them could be gone, and then you're going to be like, oh no, I just passed up on McCaffrey, and now all I've got are second tier, third tier running backs and sketchy wide receivers that I could take in another 2 rounds from now. So I think, without knowing how many teams are in that draft, I would say that you go McCaffrey and then take it from there. Morgan A. with another question. I'm being offered Rashad and Kincaid for London in PPR. 3 wide receiver, 1 flex, have Ahmed. I'm not even looking at the rest of your team. If I can get Rashad, well, I will. But my first reaction is, if I can get Rashad and Kincaid in PPR for Drake London, I'm doing it. Especially if it's a redraft or dynasty. And I'm looking at your wide receiver. I mean, you're loaded at wide receiver, so it's not like you need those wide receivers. If JJ is Justin Jefferson, maybe it's Josh Jacobs. but it looks like you're listing wide receivers. Oh, okay, then I see the running backs. Yeah, and you're a little shy. You're fine at running back, but Rashad into that group in PPR is just like a beautiful thing. Like in my heart of hearts, it's not priced this way, but in my heart of hearts, I would rather have Rashad than Drake London. Just all things being equal. So now you're also getting Kincaid. Oh, man, that is incredible. And so what? You'll have the power at tight end. You'll have Pitts and Kincaid. You could use them as you could use one as a flex if they're both going off, or if Pitts is a letdown again, you're going to have Kincaid, or vice versa. I think it's a beautiful trade. I would be all over that deal, especially given your roster. That is like manna from heaven. What a deal! Please let me know if you got that. I will celebrate in your honor. I will pour one out. I will get a big old glass of Yoo-Hoo and take a couple sips in your honor if I know that you got that deal. Cletus is a redraft with Superflex, just as simple as adding 4 points to your valuation score. Is a redraft? Yes. Just for simplicity's sake, boost all of those quarterbacks. To me, all of the first, just roughly, there may be an except like a McCaffrey may be an exception in the middle or back end of the first round, but if given the choice, I would still take a quarterback. In reality, for me in Superflex, the first 12 players should probably be quarterbacks. McCaffrey might have an argument to be in that 12 statistically, but I personally, when I'm in it, I'm taking quarterback. I don't even look at the other positions. I'm like quarterback, and then probably quarterback second, and then I know I can outdraft everybody from there, even though I'm quarterback heavy and everybody else went quarterback, and then they couldn't help themselves but to get the positional players. So you should, for me, in Superflex or 2 quarterback or whatever the situation is, for me it is definitely quarterback first. I don't care who's available. Then it's pretty much quarterback second. There could be a player or two that could compel me, and I could look at the board and say, everybody didn't go quarterback crazy. I might be able to get a great quarterback in the third, but I'm coming out of the first 3 rounds with at least 2 quarterbacks in Superflex is the way that I roll. Let's see. What's your reaction to Luke McCaffrey? We hit that at the top of the show. William Newcomb. Hey, IDP, you brought us the Schobert call, the Jamie Collins call, like a magician. I see Spates and Andreessen wherever they may be on your IDP Dynasty ranks. Can't wait for their write-ups. Yeah, I'm hoping I can get some time to do scouting reports deeper on both of those guys, but they're late breaking, and I missed them both pre-draft, and I missed Spates pretty much in the preseason. As soon as I saw Andreessen in the preseason, it was game on. Spates, I then watched after the fact when all this news was breaking, and when my source told me, like, Ernest Jones is going to get traded. Don't even think this is just a ploy and the Rams are going to sign him, type of thing. Like, they're going to move Ernest Jones because they believe in Spate that much. So I was like, oh, okay. I didn't really catch Spates catching my eye at all. I need to go watch. So I went back and I've told this story a couple weeks ago, but I'll tell it again because it's important to the story, the process. I have to go out and watch the 3rd preseason game he must have been great. And then my source is like, they held Spate out. And McVay holds his key players out. So of the preseason. So an undrafted free agent rookie was held out of the 3rd preseason game at linebacker, and Ernest Jones is about to get traded. You do the math. So I was like, wow, that's impressive. And then the next day, Ernest Jones was traded. I then went and watched Spates week 1 and week 2 in the preseason, and I thought he was fine but it was nothing like watching Andreessen. As soon as I watched Andreessen, I was like, oh, good Lord, how I wish I would have. I wish the numbers in our scouting models would have brought him to my attention earlier. He just didn't raise up to the point where I needed to look. So that's why it's important to go through and scout all the preseason tape. So, because there's a ton of guys that look a certain way in college, or we're in a certain system, or in a whatever, and then they get unleashed in the pros. And there's other guys that are great in college and then they wilt, is that Carolina linebacker that from Kentucky, and everybody likes that I don't get. And I was watching him and I'm like, I still don't get it. Traven something. And then James Williams from Tennessee looks like he's scared to play. So that's why I love the preseason. It's like the best scouting. It's better than college scouting. So Andreessen, yes. Spades, it looked fine, but I'm taking it more that if the Rams are this excited, then we need to be this excited. But Andreessen just totally pops off the tape in the preseason. Sam Shen, 6-point touchdown, 12 teams, full PPR league. I have got Stroud, Pacheco, right? That all looks good. That looks good. Oh, how did I do? You got the running backs. You got the ace wide receiver. You got depth. Ooh, you're going with Taysom as your lead punch at tight end. Bold. I like it. You see what our rankings are on Taysom this week. It's going to be a good week. And then Levis has the number 2 quarterback. I'm fine with Levis being the number 2 quarterback. Just if Levis is going to be your number 2 quarterback, you just realize the first probably 2 weeks, I think, of the schedule, and maybe 3 of the first 4 games are not favorable matchups. Like, he's got the Jets week 2. I love Brock Purdy. I ain't starting Brock Purdy this week. I love Will Levis. And even if he goes off on Chicago week 1, I would not be diving in on him week 2 against the Jets. After the first couple weeks, then you're going to start to see Levis shine. If he shines the first 2 weeks, that dude, he might be up for the MVP of the league. But I'm going to assume he's going to be Midland the first. He might be good against Chicago and then struggle against the Jets, because they're all going to struggle against the Jets when the Jets are fully healthy. But then the path starts to open up for Levis. So having CJ Stroud is a good way to start when you have Levis or a Brock Purdy as your number 2, because you cannot use Brock Purdy this week. Sam Shen, first time doing draft based on your rankings. It looks just the way that I want a draft to look, and that's a great Jerome Ford pull too. Taiwan 12 team, full PPR, 4 points with 2 flex. I love all of these. All of a sudden, all of these leagues have 2 flex. That's the way it needs to be. I think next year I might push for 3 flex in lineups. The more players, the better it is for us. The more fun it is. The more a game comes on, and you're likely to have a player going when you have 2 and 3 flexes. Drafted first, CMC, Rashad. Yep, and a lot. That's the type of draft I'm envisioning for. Who was it? Morgan's draft. Is that you almost have to go McCaffrey. Then you're the one that's likely to hang in this, to be there in the second is Rashad. I'm starting to see all the Rashad do not draft bust players, Rashad White, which is beautiful, because now he's falling to around pick 24, 25, 26 instead of going 20 or high teens. Then when you lock up those 2 ace running backs, then you're opened up to start going wide receiver. And for me, Olave, who I'm not the hugest fan of his work, but I'm a huge fan of his situation, that he's a wide receiver 1 in New Orleans, almost a no-brainer. So for me, if you get Olave in the 3rd, that's just like drafting the wide receivers after the first wave of them goes by, when people start taking Brown and Puka and Devontae Adams, I would rather have Olave, or he'll be just like them, but you'll have paid the third round price, and they'll have paid a first round price. So, and I think Amari Cooper will be fine no matter who his quarterback is. I almost want Deshaun to be gone fast to help boost Amari. I almost also ended up with Jaden Daniels, which in a 4-point pass touchdown is great. And when the quarterbacks are flying, and you have to get Jaden, that's great. My only thing would be, I mean, that's a great start. Jaden Daniels, rookie, is something that myself and Andrew and Chris were talking about on our video about betting the season-long stuff ahead of the season and some of the week 1 stuff. The track record of rookie quarterbacks in their debut in week 1 is treacherous. Now, Daniels could run his way to safety for fantasy, but I sure would like to have another option to run week 1, just in case the moment is just too nerve-wracking. And if it was any other top defense besides Tampa Bay, but Tampa Bay is so fast to the ball. They have such great athletes, and they're so good against the run. They can be had in the passing game, but man, do they have Kalijah Cansey, they have the defensive tackle that runs faster than Jaden Daniels does. So I don't love this week for Daniels, but he can get by because of his running. But I don't love this matchup for him. But you can probably limp it by. But if you see better options, I'd look at them. I'd evaluate them. Then Sam Shen. Oh, got Romeo Dobbs on top of that too. If that's PPR, yep, PPR, love it. Silent Warrior, Luke McCaffrey or Noah Brown, last bench spot in PPR. I would go with Luke McCaffrey, being that that's more of an investment spot, and we don't know how he's. I mean, maybe he comes out and is like a house of fire, and they can't deny him, and then they quickly put him into the slot, put Brown to the outside, and put Zacchaeus in his usual spot, number 4, number 5 wide receiver. And then you got McCaffrey in the slot, and everything is wonderful. So I like that story more than Noah Brown pushing his way, and he'll be an outside wide receiver with a running quarterback. I don't know that the numbers will be there. I just know Noah Brown's not nothing, but it's not like Noah Brown is going to be the guy that was getting the 100-yard games with C.J. Stroud when Collins and Tank Dell were out. It's just not that same situation. So McCaffrey's the one with your last spot that could be magic or could flop, and you're cutting him and you're picking up other things a week from now. Sam Shen continues, same one quarterback lead. Should I drop Will Levis and pick up Curtis Samuel, Josh Downs, or Mooney, or stay with it? It looks like you got plenty of wide receivers. You got Amon-Ra Dell with Ladd, and then I think Hopkins is going to be fine to play week 1, but if he isn't, he'll be ready for week 2. But I'm almost positive he's going to be fine for week 1. So you don't really need those other wide receivers. The fact that you had to fall back to Jaden Daniels, you might want to pick up a Will Levis if he's the best on waivers, just in case. I mean, we don't know if Jaden Daniels needs 2 weeks to get up to speed, if he needs 4 weeks to get up to speed, or if he's going to be a home run right off the bat. So I'd like to have some insurance on Jaden Daniels. Plus, he's a runner. It only is one hit and then chaos. And then if Levis goes off, I will say this, if Samuel and Downs and Mooney are all out there, then you've got a nice wide receiver waiver pool if needed. If Mooney has a touchdown this week, somebody will pick him up. But if Will Levis goes off on the Bears, with all of the talk starting to heat up about Levis and the Tennessee offense and all of that, then everybody's coming for Will Levis. So I more want to hold Levis before everybody comes to the party. Wide receivers, any one of those three guys could be great this week, or just mediocre and still out there on waivers for you to get if you're so inclined. Levis, if he has a great game against Chicago, it's going to blow everybody's mind. They're a decent underdog, like 4.5, 4 points, 5 points. Everybody assumes the Bears are marching towards the dang Super Bowl the way they're talking about them, and that Tennessee, they're already, the 2025 mock draft articles are already coming out with Tennessee taking whatever quarterback du jour they're all into, that they're going to be wrong about. So nobody sees it coming. If Levis just wallops the Bears, as he is capable of doing, everybody's going to be on to Will Levis. If Samuel or Downs or Mooney does, has a touchdown, everybody's going to be like, oh, yeah, those guys. Jan Sawicki got screwed by not checking Taysom position, now looking for tight end options. I have Chig, but wondering who in the 14 to 20 range are guys you would like, half PPR, redraft. Off the top of my head, Noah Fant. I'm going to pull up a board real quick for you. I'm sure somebody took Bowers. Dalton Schultz is workable. Cade Otton is workable if you're desperate. Hunter Henry could be okay. Musgrave has hope. Noah Fant has hope. I like everybody I just named. I like over Chig. I think Chig is going to be split with Josh Wiley, and it's not going to be a good thing for Chig. So it would definitely pivot off of him and get into any of those other guys, even if it's in the Cade Otton, Noah Fant, Hunter Henry range, especially in half PPR. G-Sox Locks, RC, had a draft last night, 4-point PPR. How did I do? Richardson and Levis at quarterback, great. Running backs, you got Pacheco Pollard, which I love that combo. Corum is going to be as useful in a split with upside to come as Chase Brown is going to be in a split. So they're both going to be useful with an upside that they're going to be the ones in a couple weeks. And then Jalen Wright is an X factor that I love to get in on when I can, because that dude he's obviously not going to take enough touches to matter for fantasy the way that it's laid out right now. But if one of those other two guys gets hurt, Jalen Wright's going to be a monster. Especially if it's Achane that goes down. Jamar, love that. Debo. Oh, right. Oh, man. You killed it. That's like the perfect draft. The team got made fun of. Oh, goodness. Great. That's the two things you want coming out of a draft. If it's a mock draft or a real draft, is that you get graded by the system as a C, D, or they don't give Fs anymore. So you get a C, D, and projected to be 10th, 11th, 12th, or third to last, second to last, or hopefully last, then you know you did a good thing. But then the other thing is, if people are making fun of your draft, then that's beautiful. You know you did well when people in your draft are laughing at your draft. They will, I don't know if these are people you've drafted with before, or if this is the first time, or if this is the first time you're using FFM, but I'll guarantee you, and the people that have been with FFM for a long time that are in this chat can testify, it starts out with them laughing, and then a year or 2 or 3 in, they're mystified by all of the players you're pulling out of the thin air weeks ahead of things happening, and they're diving all over themselves to pick up players that you cut because you must know something. So today's laughter is going to be tomorrow's fear. You may, using my information and my models, you may never win a fantasy title ever. It's very difficult to win a head-to-head to get all the way through and win titles. In Dynasty, we have a real high hit rate. In Redraft, we have a good hit rate, but no matter how dominant a team we have, by the end of the season, with injuries and what other teams just having a hot week and you have a cold week, I don't guarantee anything using the FFM material for wins and losses, but you'll do fine, and probably better than fine. But I will guarantee, if you're drafting with the same people over the course of years, you will be the most feared personnel person in the league, and they will not laugh at things you're doing after a year or two. That's my goal, is to have everybody with the knowledge and the confidence of knowing what their players are worth, what other players are worth, so you can play this game with the utmost confidence. But that doesn't mean that you're going to win, because hell, anything stupid can happen in a week. If this was perfect, if I had the perfect system that won every week, I wouldn't have a website. I'd be racking all of this up myself for high stakes dynasty and fantasy titles and be retired and living on the beach somewhere. It is hard to head to head make it through a season with all the injuries and all the changes and all the weather later in the season. But I do guarantee you're going to have the respect of the people in your league after 2 or 3 drafts. Okay, where were we? Gabriel Rogers, is Walker and JSN for London and Brooks a good trade? I would need a little bit more information on that. Like, is it PPR? Are we talking, 3 wide receivers start, or is it a standard lineup? But I'm just going to take it on the surface. And I also don't know if this is redraft or dynasty. But so I'm just going to talk in general. I didn't like Kenneth Walker to begin this season months ago. Now I am kicking myself and I'm into Kenneth Walker because Seattle's into Kenneth Walker. He's still not my favorite running back, but I can fall in love with running backs that their own team is in love with. And so the new regime in Seattle is all in on Kenneth Walker. So Kenneth Walker, especially this year, is going to be really good. I don't believe in JSN, never have, probably never will. JSN, I'll take Curtis Samuel, Josh Downs, Darnell Mooney, going back to one of the earlier questions, before I'd even think. I wouldn't take JSN on purpose ever, unless he had fallen so far that I just took him because I thought if he has a touchdown week 1, I'll be able to trade him like he's Marvin Harrison. That's the only appeal that JSN has to me. So I respect where Walker's at with the new regime. I have no love for JSN. London is good, but he's fairly priced or overpriced. I don't like that. And then Brooks will be fine for later. If it's a redraft, Brooks to me is nothing. If this is redraft, then this is Walker, and this is basically Walker for London. If it's dynasty, then Brooks has good value. If this is dynasty, just straight up without knowing anything about the other teams and situations and all of that, I would like the London and Brooks side for the short and the long term, because then you could turn around and trade London for a running back if you needed to. But Walker London is about an even swap, and then JSN Brooks don't mean anything for me for redraft, but in Dynasty, Brooks means a lot, and JSN still doesn't really mean anything. So I'm on the London Brooks side. Long term, redraft, it's a push. I'd probably rather have the Walker JSN side because I know I could trade JSN. I don't think you're going to get anything out of Brooks worth much this year. Daniel K, is Justice Hill rosterable in 12-team 20? Yes, for sure. He is the handcuff for Derrick Henry until at least midseason, if not longer than that. So that's a very valuable spot to be in. Especially if you have Derrick Henry, then it's a must in a 22 roster spot situation. Sam Shin, question on a new subscription announcement. I assume it's a one-time fee. Yes. Thank you for asking that question. It is a one-time fee for those that are interested, a one-time subscription for the season. You get access to all of the betting information that we have that has been... I don't want to be an infomercial or be that guy, but we did pretty good last year. And then the Discord chat, the private chat for FFMers is right along with that. So some people may be just interested in the chat and could care less about the betting side, and then other people vice versa. But both of them are included because I wanted to launch them and get them out there and see how people enjoyed it. But it is a one-time subscription, and then it'll end with the Super Bowl ending, and then we'll retool it and get it ready for you can re-sign up again in as early as March for when we start betting on the draft stuff, and then early betting that comes out when the schedules come out in May. So, but you can subscribe in March or April or May or whenever it is that you want to get back into your betting. It's going to be one price. So it's always going to be one price for the season. G Sox Locks RC, have my Dynasty rookie draft tomorrow. How do you feel about non-rookies compared to rookies? Example, like take in Yossi Voss compared to McCaffrey, or a Dowdle versus Davis, Tracy, or Lobby. I am more open to the non-rookies than most people are. Usually when you get a Dynasty rookie draft, everybody's piling into the magical unicorns in case they turn out to be magical unicorns. So everybody loves the rookies. There's not as much love for second and third year players. So I would just evaluate them as who I think are the better player. Who would I rather have long term? And I would rather have... I like Luke McCaffrey, but I like Yossi Voss too. So they're probably close maybe in our Dynasty rankings, but I really like Yossi Voss, especially when next year T. Higgins, when they pay Jamar Chase, they have to get rid of T. Higgins. The winner of the Jamar Chase situation is Yossi Voss right now and a year from now. Because if Jamar Chase holds out, I should have said this earlier. If you dive in and draft Jamar Chase, whether you pick him on time or whether he falls to you at 12 and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I got Jamar Chase, you have to get Yossi Voss. Because if Chase does hold out and leaves you holding the bag, Yossi Voss is going to be the big winner of that. So that's the most important thing I could say on this broadcast. Then long term, not only is he a winner now, but long term, they can't afford T. Higgins. T. Higgins is gone when Jamar Chase signs this deal, of which he was going to get the deal next year anyway. T. Higgins was going to be gone anyway. And the reason why they didn't give in to T. Higgins is because they got Yossi Voss and others, but Yossi Voss is the one. So I'm way into Yossi Voss, but I really like Luke McCaffrey too. But I would rather have the number 2 wide receiver with Joe Burrow than the number 2 wide receiver with Jaden Daniels, just from a volume perspective. I like Jaden Daniels a lot, but he's not Joe Burrow. And then I'm not into Dowdle, so I would take Tracy or Lobby. If you didn't have any ties to those running backs, like if you have Cook, you take Davis. If you have Singletary, take Tracy. If you have Zamir White, you take Lobby. Is probably the way to go with that. But all things being equal, I would take Tracy over that group as the guy that could wind up being the starter by week 3. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if one of these guys is going to become the natural starter, not because of injury, it'll be Tracy. And I hope Ross Jacobs appreciates that. He was right on Tracy all along. I was cool on Tracy before I saw him in the preseason, and Ross was all in, and he was correct. G-Sox Locks taking Bauer. And I'm not saying that Tyrone Tracy is like the next great running back of the universe. It's just I don't think Davis is as good as James Cook, even though I'm not a James Cook fan. Lobby's not better than Zamir White at this point, and I know the coaches don't think that, but Singletary could be had by Tyrone Tracy. So that's my Tyrone Tracy love. It's not. I'm not saying he's the next rock star. He's just in a good situation compared to the other guys. And I do not believe Dowdle is going to be the starter. I may eat that. I may take a pie in the face on that one, but I do not think Dowdle is going to be anywhere near the starter share of touches that Ezekiel Elliott is, nor Dalvin Cook. Nor Dalvin Cook compared to Zeke. G-Sox Locks taking Bowers at 103 in the Dynasty because I need a tight end. That's fine. I'm a little weak at wide receiver to running back, but my dumb passing on Thomas for Corum. No, not if you believe in Corum, because I mean Corum's got a cap on him because Kyron is there. Kyron's always gonna, unless he gets hurt again, which is likely. Corum's gonna have somebody to share with, but so is pretty much every running back into the future. Brian Thomas could be a superstar, but they stuck him with Trevor Lawrence, and I don't know that that's a great fit. We could be pining away and complaining about the way Brian Thomas is used for the next 3 years, while Corum becomes the 65-35 lead over Kyron by week 5 of this season. So I get going with Thomas because I think he could be a superstar, but I get going with Corum because he's probably in a better place. Alex Palumbo, higher seed. Biggest adjustment to rankings form from a few months ago in terms of redraft, non-super flex, normal, half PPR, big movers, good or bad. The biggest movers for me over the last couple months, I started to get it on Kenneth Walker. I started to get it. I mean, I wasn't against Tony Pollard, but I believe Tony Pollard's going to be more of the lead in Tennessee, and that's going to be a high functioning offense. And then when I suspected that Rashee Rice was not going to get suspended, then like a month or so ago, I started going crazy for Rashee. Guys that I'm falling down on, or that I'm losing confidence in, maybe Amari Cooper I'm losing confidence in because of the Deshaun thing, like because of Deshaun. Like if Deshaun plays, I'm a little worried. But I'm not totally worried, but I'm just backing off. I'm more into DK Metcalf in that area now. Who don't I like as much as I did? No one's coming to mind on that just yet. Ayuk returning to San Francisco doesn't totally thrill me. I don't know that we're going to see a repeat wide receiver 1 season from him. But didn't have massive rankings on him either. But I had worse rankings on him actually because I thought he was going to Pittsburgh and that would have been his death. Gogo Jin RC strictly savvy dynasty questions here. Are you holding Eric Gray or Blake Watson on your roster? I would hold Blake Watson just because I think he's a more talented guy. I think Eric Gray got lucky that first preseason game, had that big preseason game, and then all of a sudden he was, amazing and got kept on the roster. I think it's a head fake. I think Blake Watson has more talent, so I'd rather go with him. Let me look at the Cleveland depth chart real quick to see if they hasn't been up. There's not a new depth chart out there. I would just say this, if Deshaun Watson is not available to play Sunday, it's going to be Jameis Winston. Now, they might want it to be DTR as fast as they can, but this preseason, it looked like to me they were giving Jameis Winston the position of the backup, the veteran experience. DTR still, to me, does not look ready. It would be something if DTR ended up being over Jameis Winston on the depth chart. Then I would start to get excited about DTR. But I think it'll be Winston to start. It just makes more sense. The more experience, more everything with Jameis Winston, who I think is terrible, but he's probably better for Cleveland than DTR right now. But they will probably get sick of Winston within about 3 weeks. They should take Jameis Winston and Mike Vrabel and tell them, hey, you guys want to race each other, and it's so funny. Here's a race. Start out at the 20-yard line, like inside the red zone. Start at the 20-yard line, and let's see who the fastest is. We want you to run straight through the end zone and straight through the tunnel out into the parking lot to see which one of you guys is the fastest. And then when you got them to do that, because it's so hilarious that they race against each other in practice, as soon as they left the building, I would have the security guards immediately lock the gates and leave them out there and tell them they were both fired. So it's possible that that's what's going to happen to Jameis Winston by week 3 if he has to be the emergency starter in week 1 or emergency starter for the season. They will probably want it to be DTR because Winston's so bad, but it'll probably start out, they'll have to go with the veteran guy. And if I'm them, I'm kicking myself that I didn't get Joe Flacco. And I would be going to the Colts going, do I have to give you a first-round pick for Joe Flacco? I mean, name your price. Just, I'll send you Winston and Mike Vrabel. They're running your way. We told them the race ends in Indianapolis. Just please let us have Joe Flacco back. If the Browns had Joe Flacco today, I would say that the Browns would be one of the favorites to win the AFC North. But that's off topic. Let's get back on the questions. Eric Kublank. Hey RC, Dynasty Auction, PPR, and Rebuild Mode. What kind of return would Kmet and Godwin in a package deal get in return? You should get a good return for Godwin, and Kmet will have some value. You want to get rid of Kmet before everybody realizes that Everett's over him. Need wide receiver help. Have Ferguson and Stover as tight ends. That's totally fine. So I would package them up. I don't know, because then you got to consider price too. If this is Dynasty Auction, then you got to consider price. So there's too many complexities to that question. I would just say you should get a strong, and I don't know how Godwin's priced. You should get good interest in Godwin, depending on his price, and Kmet being thrown in. If a team is a little weaker at tight end, it would be attractive to them before the season starts. So Godwin is the headliner in that. Kmet is the kind of the throw in. It'd be more, what do you think you could get for Godwin? What player are you setting your sights on? And then I'm just gonna throw out a name in a rebuild. I don't know that it would be this name, but let's say you wanted to shoot for DK Metcalf. And like nobody's gonna swap Godwin for DK Metcalf, but maybe if it's Godwin and Kmet, and the person was hot, that there are people that are hot to trot on Chris Godwin. Other people are like that guy from 3 years ago, but there are other people that are like, oh, this is the comeback. This is, remember what Godwin was 3 years ago? No, with Jameis Winston. That's why you shouldn't get too afraid of Jameis Winston for Amari Cooper. Godwin had that 1 year. He's going to have it again this year. I'm not a big Chris Godwin guy, but if you can find that person to deal with, they'll get excited and want him. Whatever's equivalent to Godwin to get could be thrown in commit is what gets it to. Yeah, there's Ross Jacobs, hot to trot on Godwin, Mr. 3 years ago. He's coming back this year, which he could. I mean, they're moving him to the slot. That's better, but it just looked like to me last year, Godwin looks like he's lost a lot of his juice, and that was 1 year where Godwin and Evans went off, and Winston was throwing a million times as he does. That might have been the year he had 30 touchdowns and 30 interceptions. So I just think it was a moment in time, and now he's just an okay wide receiver. He's not bad. He's useful in fantasy, more useful probably in PPR. But if I'm rebuilding Dynasty, there are the Ross Jacobs out there that would love to have your Chris Godwin. So if you're rebuilding, pass that buck and get something for the future. Boyd Zander, half PPR, 12 team, 26 man roster Dynasty. Need to drop one to make the roster. Thinking of Kendra Perry or Tillman. I'm just going to take it with, let me see if you got anybody that's an obvious drop. If you had to drop one of Kendra, you don't have Kamara, so that's a strike against Kendra. The head coach hates Perry, but he could be replaced. I would go with probably Cedric Tillman, just because that Cleveland situation is just going to be ugly no matter who they turn to, and Tillman's not going to be the lead punch, even if he gets into the starting three, which I'm not sure that he is, but he should be. But he's probably not going to be. There's not enough with Njoku, and there's not enough to make Tillman. Tillman's good. He needs to be in a situation where it can activate him. I think A.T. Perry can be a superstar. I think Cedric Tillman could be good. I think Kendre Miller's being way overblown. When Kendre Miller comes back, like if Kamara gets hurt, like week 3, and Kendre Miller's coming off of IR, and the Saints are 1-3, I don't know that Dennis Allen's going to have all this pride of like, I'm going to show Kendre Miller who's boss. I'm gonna go forth and win with Jamal Williams. He sees about a half of that, and he's going to be like, hey, Kendre, you ready to go in? So I'd want to keep the two Saints guys, especially if this is Dynasty, because next year, even if it takes to next year, you'll have a new coach next year. You may have a new coach by mid-season. So I think Tillman's just kind of is good, but he's stuck. Colin McKenna, hey RC, apologies, missed the memo stating starting early. That's all right. You're here. Just one question for me. Happy PPR, would you trade away Jaleel for Zeke at this point? I presume no, but was giving it more thought. Is this redraft or dynasty? I'm going to assume redraft. I mean, do you really need... I mean, Jaleel is good for PPR, but there's a cluster of running backs there. Zeke could be the main starter. Oh, what's more likely to happen after week 1? All running backs staying healthy. That we go, wow, I can't believe it. Jaleel McLaughlin led the Broncos in touches. He got like 13 carries, and Javonte Williams only got 9. I can't believe it. Man, I got Jaleel McLaughlin. He's the number 1 running back for Denver. Is that more likely to happen? Or after week 1, we're like, Zeke got 15 carries and 5 targets and was so obviously clearly the number 1. why did anybody doubt this? Which one of those two stories is more likely to happen? So for redraft, if I'm running back desperate, I would go with Zeke and roll the dice that he's going to be the lead guy. Jalil's not going to be the lead guy. And when Jalil's not the lead guy, or if Zeke isn't the lead guy, when you have either one of those guys, you're probably, in redraft, you're probably going to drop them and get on to anything else, because these can't be the key running backs for you on your redraft roster, I would assume. Again, I'm taking it as redraft. Bill in Texas, with so many good wide receivers out there in a 2-flex league, is more better? Final roster spot, Wilson or Lobby? I mean, it's not so much of a positional tiebreaker as it is. I get what you're saying, because there's more Michael Wilsons out there at running back. All of a sudden, you hit a certain point and like all the running backs are gone. But there's still a lot of wide receivers where you're like, oh, I have hope for Michael Wilson. Oh, I have hope for Rashad Bateman. I have hope for Josh Downs, Darnell Mooney. And if it's dynasty, I'm probably leaning on a tiebreaker. If I don't need a wide receiver to maybe step in right away, maybe Lobby. But in non-PPR, that's not Lobby's. The beauty of Lobby is a PPR. If it's a PPR, I'd say Lobby for dynasty by maybe a hair. But non-PPR, I'd go with Michael Wilson, because at least he started. We know what Michael Wilson's going to do. He's going to start, and if Marv falls a little flat, then Michael Wilson may be their sneaky top wide receiver. So I'd go with Wilson there. You'll have time to get Lobby, and there's going to be other Dylan Lobbies that pop up. Colin McKenna, other backs are both Whites, Jalen Wright, and Chase Brown. To the Jaleel Zeke question. If this is redraft, I'd rather have Zeke and have the chance that if Zeke comes out week 1 and takes 16, 17 carries and gets 3 or 4 catches and is so clearly the guy, even if it's just for now, that's going to have value to flip. So you obviously don't need either of those guys. So I'd play it to see, is Zeke really the guy in week 1 that I can trade after week 1? Or is Zeke or Jaleel the guy I'm going to cut because 17 other hot things popped up that RC's slobbering at the mouth over? So I would take Zeke if that was redraft. All right, I got 4 minutes here. Morgan A, trade accepted. Nice, like it. Tywinook, follow-up. That's the deal that started us off back at the top of the chat. Tywinook, follow-up to my 12 team. Backed up Jade Daniels with Herbert. Oh, good. You're good. Tywinook, I get laughed at with a C, D, F grade every year with FFM. Yeah, there's always somebody in your league that no matter how successful you are, they know everything because they got the ESPN draft guide. And they know everything about where everybody's supposed to be drafted. So I guess you can't totally avoid. There's always one. And there's Ross, hot to trot for Godwin. And moving him back in the slot. He's got the same coordinator that was forcing targets to Kupp. I'm not going to go a Cooper Kupp equivalent for Godwin because of the offensive coordinator. I mean, I'm going to give Sean McVay the credit for that. We don't even know that his offensive coordinators do anything besides go get him chunky soup bowls. So that is it with 2 minutes to spare. We made it through all the questions that are on there. Thank you all for all of the great questions and comments. Appreciate the live attendance. Appreciate everybody who's going to be watching this on demand after. I am going to go get ready for a draft and then check in on the vaunted betting site opening up that you should be able to start subscribing to tonight. If something breaks down on it, it will be into the wee hours of the morning or first thing Wednesday that it'll be up, but it's up. I mean, it's rounding third and getting ready to slide into home. Just needs to pass a couple more checks to make sure everything's okay. And then you should be greeted right away with the YouTube video that I'm super proud of. It was the best. I mean, I love talking football with Chris and Andrew, and love talking betting, and I get good ideas from them when we get talking. But what we shot the other day was the best work we ever did. Really enjoyed it and got a lot out of it, and made bets right along during the time that we were recording. So I think you're really going to like that. Then a bunch of content will come into that wee hours of the morning tonight, and then into tomorrow. And then we'll figure out this whole new landscape, this whole new world of Discord. We'll have how-tos and what-tos, and get people who are already used to Discord. We'll have we'll start getting you in there and inviting you to the party and pour you a drink. So the Discord, when you first get into it, is going to be like an empty room. It's like, okay, what's the big deal with this? Well, we're waiting for everybody to get in there so that chatting and info and everything else and threads and topics can start going in there for everybody to go off to the races with. So, but at first, it's just going to be getting everybody to the party. With there'll be like no music playing. The food is just getting ready to be rolled out. So, but we want to get that up and running before the Thursday night and Friday night games, so that we can all chat in there and make sarcastic comments about the games going on, as we like to do. So that is it for me. It is 8 o'clock. Perfect timing. I am out of here. Have a good rest of your evening, and good luck to those who are drafting tonight on the big draft